Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. We're going to take the fasting section of the Risala of Ibn Abi Zayd al-Qayrawani, rahimahullah ta'ala. And the author starts off this section by saying, وَصَوْمُ شَهْرِ رَمَضَانَ فَرِيضَةٌ. And fasting the month of Ramadan is fard. What kind of fard is this? Fard ayn, right? Every person, that of course reached the age of puberty, has sound intellect, and of course is Muslim, must fast this month. Which of course you take those conditions elsewhere, but it's not fard kifaya, for example, where if some people do it, then the sin is lifted on everyone else. No, we're talking about fard ayn here. Now, on every Muslim that has sound intellect and has reached the age of puberty. يصام لرؤية الهلال ويفطر لرؤيته. So you start fasting when you see the hilal. The hilal, of course, of Ramadan, coming out of the month of Sha'ban, and then to break fast after finishing the month of Ramadan, going into the month of Shawwal. Of course, the Malikiyah, they have the ru'ya of two upright male witnesses, or the group. But the author doesn't really talk about it here. For establishing the month of Ramadan and for establishing the month of Shawwal. So it's 2 and 2, contrary to others like the Hanabila and the Shafi'iyya, who established the month of Ramadan with 1. But they agree with the Malikiyya in establishing the month of Shawwal with 2. So, نعم. كان 30 يوما أو 29 يوما. The Islamic months are either 30 or 29 days, right? All 12 of the months, they're either 29 or 30 days. So there's no 28, there's no 31, right? It's really not a difficult matter. I think many make it a difficult thing, but it's actually pretty straightforward. فإن غم الهلال فيعد 30 يوما من غرة الشهر الذي قبله ثم يصام وكذلك في الفطر. All right, so it's easy enough. So if the hilal is not able to be seen, whether it's cloudy or different conditions that will keep you from seeing the hilal, if that's the case, then you just go 30 days. Right, you go 30 days. That's for every Islamic month. All right, so if you go to see the hilal on the 29th night, if you see the hilal, right, then you're in Ramadan. If you don't, then you go 30 days, and the next day is Ramadan. That's it. Like it's not a difficult matter. And going 30 days is actually the obviously the Maliki opinion, and it's the Qawl al-Jumhur, the majority opinion, contrary to the Hanabila, who actually, if they can't see it, then they actually fast the next day. One of their mufradat. Naam. So yes, if you see the if we see the hilal, obviously with the conditions, the 2 male witnesses, which doesn't how would you establish that today? But or the group, this is kind of like take the theory probably more than the application right now, because everyone probably has a question. What about this? And I live here, and what about let's focus on that another time on the actual application. Let's just take the theory now. Because many don't know the actual classical texts and what they say to even begin to apply them in today's age. No. So that's what establishes the month of Ramadan. So now, وَيُبَيِّتُ الصِّيَامَ فِي أَوَّلِهِ وَلَيْسَ عَلَيْهِ الْبَيَاتُ فِي بَقِيَّتِهِ وَيُتِمُّ الصِّيَامَ إِلَى اللَّيْلِ. Okay. So making this intention at the beginning of the month. And it's just for the Malikiyya, contrary to others, like the Shafi'i and the Hanabila, who make the intention every night. The Malikiyya, they make one intention as long as it's back to back. As long as it's back to back without a break, like traveling or the period for the woman, and different things that would break it, then you have to make a new intention. But one intention is enough if there's no breaks. In the Maliki school now. ويتم الصيام إلى الليل. نعم. ومن السنة تعجيل الفطر وتأخير السحور وإن شك في الفجر فلا يأكل. And from the sunnah is hastening in breaking your fast at Maghrib time and delaying your suhoor close to Fajr. If you have doubts in the Fajr adhan, then you do not eat. Right? And try to be safe, ikhwan. Try to get some type of, I know we have like our timetables and things like that, but try to have some type of certainty. Don't put yourself in a difficult situation where you're gonna have to do qada. Hopefully not even worse than qada, like kafara. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy. Obviously, there's some out there that say that if you have the food in your hand and the adhan comes in, you continue eating, and this goes against the four schools of fiqh, and we do not consider that opinion whatsoever. Now, and it's become a famous opinion for whatever reason. وَلَا يُصَامُ يَوْمُ الشَّكِّ لِيُحْتَاطَ بِهِ مِنْ رَمَضَانٍ. And you do not fast Yom Shak to be safe with regards to establishing Ramadan. And what is Yom Shak? It is it's the day before Ramadan, as in when you have doubts that it's the next day is Ramadan. Right, you have doubts. You went to go see the hilal, and you couldn't see it. Right, so now this is where Yom Shak becomes, because the next day actually is possible that it is Ramadan. Right, so you don't fast with the intention of it possibly being Ramadan. Right, and if you did, it doesn't count anyway, which the author is going to say. وَلِمَنْ صَامَهُ كَذَلِكَ لَمْ يُجْزِهِ. And if one fasted that Yom Shak anyway, as to be safe, that it could possibly be Ramadan, it doesn't count because you don't have a certain intention in your fast, which is not acceptable. وَإِنْ وَافَقَهُ مِنْ رَمَضَانٍ وَإِنْ وَافَقَهُ مِنْ رَمَضَانٍ, even if he or she actually fasted and it was Ramadan, right? Then it still doesn't count because you weren't sure. That's what the shak is about. You almost shak, like you were in doubt, so you cannot establish the fast on a doubt. Nah. وَلِمَنْ شَاءَ صَوْمَهُ تَطَوُّعًا أَنْ يَفْعَلْ. And of course, if one wanted to fast, so it's about the intention of fasting it with regards to being safe for Ramadan, or a tatawwu' form, as in this is a regular Monday, Thursday fast, for example, or just a regular fast that you normally do, then that is something that you can do, right? Because fasting Yom Shak is makruh But some scholars even considered it haram, right? So, but the majority of the scholars say that it is not permissible to fast it, and whether the opinions are either from makruh to haram, and most tend to say that it is makruh. Now, ومن أصبح فلم يأكل ولم يشرب ثم تبين له أن ذلك اليوم من رمضان لم يجزيه وليمسك عن الأكل في بقيته ويقضيه. Okay, so if one woke up and he did not eat or drink, and it becomes known that this day is from Ramadan, then they don't get credit for that day. But they have to refrain from eating and drinking the whole day. Why? This is from the Hurma, because the month is sacred, right? So here, even in these types of cases where the fast doesn't count, you still have to refrain from eating and drinking anyway. And you have to, and so it doesn't count as fasting, and you have to make up the day later before the next Ramadan. Nah. And this is still under the same thing of Yom Shak and fasting and not being concerned about the next day. وإذا قدم المسافر مفطرا أو طهرت الحائض نهارا فلهما الأكل في بقية يومهما. So if the traveler comes forward, of course, not fasting because the traveler has, with the conditions, can break their fast, even though it's better to stay fasting, according to the Maliki and the majority, contrary to the Hanabila. But so and then the one on her period, for example, she becomes pure, right? Which obviously means she wasn't fasting earlier. Then both of these cases, they can eat and drink the rest of the day. ومن أفطر في تطوعه عامدا أو سافر فيه فأفطر لسفره فعليه القضاء وإن أفطر ساهيا فلا قضاء عليه بخلاف الفريضة. Okay, so this is important here. If one breaks their sunnah fast, not Ramadan, sunnah fast, purposely, or travels, right, during this sunnah fast, and breaks their fast, then this person has to make it up. This is a sunnah fast. Make sure to know it's a sunnah fast, right? So if you started that sunnah fast, you cannot purposely break that fast without having to make it up later. This is the mu'tamad of the Maliki school, contrary to other schools. وإن أفطر ساهيا فلا قضاء عليه بخلاف الفريضة. Okay, so if one broke their fast forgetfully, then there's nothing on them with regards to the sunnah fast, right? So you're not allowed to break it purposely, but if you forgot, right? Obviously, being forgetful. It's known, you can't act like you didn't know or something like that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. فلا قضاء عليه بخلاف الفريضة. بخلاف الفريضة, because if you in the fard of the fast, like Ramadan, if you ate forgetfully, then you have to continue fasting, but the fast does not count, and you have to do qada. You have to make up that day later before the next Ramadan, and this is contrary to the other schools. And this possibly could be of the mufradat of the madhab, where the Maliki are singular with regards to the other three schools. because the other schools will say, well, you know, they continue the fast and there's no qada on that person, right? But the Maliki, they interpret it as there's no sin on that person, but the fast has been broken. They have to continue fasting because of the hurma of the month itself, but they have to make it up before the next Ramadan. ولا بأس بالسواك للصائم في جميع نهاره. Okay, so and there's nothing on the person. It's permissible for the person to use siwak while fasting the whole day, right? And this is what seems that it's kind of refuting the schools like the Shafi'i and the Hanabila, for example, that say it's makruh to do the siwak after the dhuhr adhan, for example, right? Yeah, so but here there's no restriction for the Malikiya. Obviously, you want to be careful, and you probably want to avoid a wetter type of siwak. You know, you want to be aware of anything falling down the throat, pieces of the siwak. So just be careful using it, right? But generally, it is permissible to use siwak the whole day of fasting in the Maliki school. ولا تكره له الحجامة إلا خيفة التغرير. And here it says, and it's not makruh to do hijama, the cupping, in particular the wet cupping with the blood. إلا خيفة التغرير, except that one fears that one is going to be affected by it, that they're going to have to break their fast, right? So that's so obviously we understand that it could be makruh if you have that fear of it. So really one should probably avoid it, even though I mean it could be some good benefits of doing it while you're fasting. Yeah, it's probably. I mean, the majority of the scholars, they allow it, as in they don't make the fast invalid, contrary to the Hanabila. This is one of the mufradat of the Hanbali school, contrary to the majority, that the one that does the hijama and the one that gets it done has their fast broken, and this is ta'abbudi for them. That means they don't do qiyas, analogy, on giving blood, at the doctors, for example. So it's safe to say that the four schools don't say anything about giving blood breaking the fast, right? So it's limited to hijama itself. Now, ومن ضرعه القيء في رمضان فلا قضاء عليه, and the one that the vomit forcefully came out, then there's no makeup for that person. The fast is still valid. But وإن استقاء فقاء فعليه القضاء. If one forcefully allows their selves to vomit, then they have to make up the fast. And of course, be careful as well if you do to swallow any of it back. Try to avoid that. Not that one would purposely do that, but just try to avoid that now. وإذا خافت الحامل على ما في بطنها أفطرت ولم تطعم وقد قيل تطعم. Okay, and the hamil, the pregnant woman, if she's afraid of which is in her stomach, in the womb, her baby, then she can break the fast, and she does not feed. وَقَدْ قِيلَ, this is صيغة تمريض, to show weakness. This is another opinion in the school, تطعم, that she does feed. But the mu'tamad is she does not feed. Now, وللمرضع إن خافت على ولدها وَلَمْ تَجِدْ مَا تَسْتَأْجِرْهُ لَهُ. If the breastfeeder, the one that is breastfeeding her child, if she's afraid for her child, and she cannot find someone, to take care of that responsibility of breastfeeding for her, maybe even pay someone to do it. أو لم يقبل غيرها, or that the child doesn't accept anyone but the mother, and تفطر وتطعم. So she can break the fast and she has to feed. So she has to feed contrary to the pregnant woman. She does feed. And note as well that they both have to make up the fast, though. Eventually, I know the pregnant, and even the breastfeeder, it can be kind of difficult to calculate, but because obviously you're going to be pregnant for a while, and then you'll be breastfeeding for a while. ويستحب للشيخ الكبير إذا أفطر أن يطعم. And it's mustahab, it's recommended for the shaykh, the older person, that if they broke their fast, that they feed. Right? Note that it's mustahab, contrary to the majority of the scholars, like the Shafi'i and the Hanabila. And this seems to be one of the mufradat of the Maliki school, that it's only mustahab to feed. Right? Which means if they don't feed, there's nothing on them. Right, but everyone would be in agreement that if they can't fast, then they don't fast. But the question is, do they have to feed? وَالْإِطْعَامُ فِي هَذَا كُلِّهِ مُدٌّ عَنْ كُلِّ يَوْمٍ يَقْضِيهِ. And the it'am, feeding, with all of this, with regards to what we just mentioned, these different situations of al-hamil, al-murdi', in the Shaykh al-Kabir, with regards to the feeding, كله mud, right? This is mud, of course, from the Prophet ﷺ, which is probably something like half a liter, maybe a handful or so, depending. So a 2-liter bottle will probably be a sa', right? So 4 amdad make a sa' or so. So it's kind of an estimation. So you give that in food. For every day, right? And this is the majority opinion, to give this mud every day, the mud of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام. وكذلك يطعم من فرط في قضاء رمضان حتى دخل عليه رمضان آخر. That the one that had to make up fast, but they were careless until the next Ramadan came, then they have to feed, right, for their carelessness, of course, and take the sin of being careless in that effort. Now, and they still have to make up those days, by the way. Those days don't go away, so they still have to make up the days. They get the sin, and they have to feed for every day that they were careless in not making up. Now, ولا صيام على الصبيان حتى يحتلم الغلام وتحيض الجارية وبالبلوغ لازمتهم أعمال الأبدان فريضة. So there's no fast on the young child that hasn't had, obviously went through the age of puberty, hasn't had the ihtilam, the wet dream, or the girl hasn't had her period yet. And there's other signs, but these are some signs mentioned here. Because with the bulugh, it's obligatory, and not just the fasting, but for all things. Right, for all things like prayer and so on, and of course stay away from the haram and so on. قال الله سبحانه وإذا بلغ الأطفال منكم الحلم فليستأذنوا. So this is Surah An-Nur. It's a shahid for obviously with regards to reaching the age of puberty, right? The child reaching the age of puberty now. Okay, so now ومن أصبح جنبا ولم يتطهر أو امرأة حائض طهرت قبل الفجر فلم يغتسلا إلا بعد الفجر أجزاهما صوم ذلك اليوم. Okay, so waking up in a state of janaba and not being able to take a shower, and this is the same for the woman on her period that's pure before Fajr. But both of these situations of the junub and the one that's pure from the period, they both didn't have a chance to take a shower, the ghusl from this state to be purified. They weren't able to except after Fajr then. Right, then it's still permissible to fast that day and there's nothing on them. So their fast is not invalidated because they weren't able to make the ghusl. No. ولا يجوز صيام يوم الفطر ولا يوم النحر. Right, this is by ijma'. It's not permissible to fast, يوم الفطر, Eid al-Fitr, which is the first day of Shawwal. ولا يوم النحر, the 10th day of Dhul Hijjah, Eid al-Fitr. ولا يصوم اليومين اللذين بعد يوم النحر إلا المتمتع الذي لا يجد هديا. Right, and they don't fast the 2 days after Eid al-Fitr as well, except for the mutamatti'. Mutamatti' is the one that does the Umrah and Hajj together, right? And of course, this requires a hadi. The Maliki, of course, they don't recommend the mutamatti' to be mutamatti' or the Qiran, of course. That Imam Maliki recommended just to do the Hajj by itself, right? And now I'm not to get into that right now, but if you do the mutamatti' or in Quran, then you have to get the hadi. Like the hadi is a consequence of that. Now, anyway, the one that couldn't get a hadi. واليوم الرابع لا يصومه متطوع ويصومه من نذره أو من كان في صيام متتابع قبل ذلك. Right, so there's a discussion about this fourth day, right? And most say don't fast it either, but you don't fast it as a like a nafila, like a sunnah fast. Right, but you do fast it. You're allowed to fast it if you vowed. If you made a vow before, then you're allowed to fast that day. Right? من كان في صيام متتابع قبل ذلك. Right? Or you had a continuous fast before that, then you're allowed to fast that day. Right? So the days that you can't fast, you mentioned, are the 2 Eid days. Right, and then definitely the 2 days after, right? But there's a discussion about that third day, which would be technically the fourth day of Eid. Are you allowed to fast it or not? So that's what that last part is speaking about. Now, ومن أفطر في نهار رمضان ناسيا فعليه القضاء فقط وكذلك من أفطر فيه لضرورة من مرض. So the one that breaks their fast during the day of Ramadan forgetfully, right, then they have to make up the fast. Then they have to make up the fast only. Or so there's no sin on them. They have to they have to continue the fast, of course, either way, but they have to make up the fast after Ramadan before the next Ramadan comes in. وكذلك من أفطر فيه لضرورة من مرض. Of course, if one is sick or one is not able to fast, then they break the fast. um, and they make up that fast before the next Ramadan. ومن سافر سفرا تقصر فيه الصلاة فله أن يفطر وإن لم تنله ضرورة وعليه القضاء والصوم أحب إلينا. Okay, so the one that travels the distance of qasr with regards to the prayer, right? Which is like 48 miles. It might be a little discussion about what that actually is. And this is what the majority say, contrary to the Hanafiya, that it's this 48 miles. But with regards to, well, what does that mean today? I think there could be a type of agreement that our 50 miles of what we know today, should be agreed upon. Especially to be safe, to get out of the discussions, the 48 miles. But 50 miles or so should be agreed upon, at least according to the majority that take the 4 burud. No. So this person can break the fast if they with these conditions. Even if they don't face an actual hardship, right? So some, they might say, well, why are we breaking our fast? Why are we breaking our fast when there's no hardship, right? We have AC today and all this, but that's not the illah and why we break the fast, right? It's not necessarily the mashaqqa, right? So that's the problem with, especially many people today that haven't studied, they might be inclined to thinking that way now. Of course, if you choose to break your fast, then you make up the fast later. وَالصَّوْمُ وَحَبُّ إِلَيْنَا, and the fasting is more beloved to us, the scholars, especially the Malikiya. And this is the majority opinion that it's recommended to keep your fast. This is the majority opinion, contrary to the Hanabila. Now, and breaking the fast might be closer to what they call khilaf al-awla, breaking the fast there. But really, if you really are struggling, then there's nothing on you. It's permissible to break it, and one shouldn't feel bad or anything. But there's definitely that barak of Ramadan, and it's just easier to fast in Ramadan. The shayateen are chained up. Whatever that actually might mean, is it literal, is it, a metaphor. There's discussions about that hadith, but anyway, and it's just harder to fast outside Ramadan now. وَمَنْ سَافَرَ أَقَلَّ مِنْ أَرْبَعَةِ بُرُدٍ. This is what we talked about before, the أَرْبَعَةِ burud, right? The 48 miles. So that's according to the majority, contrary to the Hanafi, as when you make qasr. فَظَنَّ أَنَّ الْفِطْرَ مُبَاحٌ لَهُ فَأَفْطَرَ فَلَا كَفَّارَةَ عَلَيْهِ وَعَلَيْهِ الْقَضَاء. So if the one travels under this 48 miles or so, this 4 burud, which is Jami' al-Barid, and this person thought that they can break the fast, and they did break the fast, there's no kafara on them. So this is the mas'ala of, or what they call ta'wil qarib and ba'id. Right, so this is considered to be a ta'wil as qarib. He wasn't like really off too much. Still, this person has no kafara, but they have to do qada. They have to do qada though, right? Because they didn't fulfill the conditions, right? So because it was ta'wil qarib, is an acceptable ta'wil, right? There's no kafara on this person, but they have to make up this day later. وَكُلُّ مَنْ أَفْطَرَ مُتَأَوِّلًا فَلَا كَفَّارَةَ عَلَيْهِ. This is what it's saying here, that if one has a ta'wil that's acceptable ta'wil with regards to interpreting the situation and breaks the fast, there's no kafara, this expiation, which we're going to get to what that is. There's no kafara on this person. وَإِنَّمَا الْكَفَّارَةُ عَلَى مَنْ أَفْطَرَ مُتَعَمِّدًا بِأَكْلٍ أَوْ شُرْبٍ أَوْ جِمَاعٍ مَعَ الْقَضَاءِ. Okay, so this mas'ala here. The kafara is on the one that drinks or eats or has sexual intercourse on purpose during Ramadan. That's what the kafara is upon, right? And this is the opinion of the Maliki and the Hanafiya, contrary to the Shafi'i and the Hanabila. The Shafi'i and the Hanabila only have the kafara for the jima', for the intercourse only, But the obviously the Maliki and the Hanafiya, they're more expansive. If anything that really was on purpose to break the fast without a valid interpretation, then there's going to be, of course, qada already in the sin, but you're going to have to do the kafara, the expiation. والكفارة في ذلك إطعام 60 مسكينا لكل مسكين مد بمد النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فذلك أحب إلينا وله أن يكفر بعتق رقبة أو صيام شهرين متتابعين وليس على من أفطر في قضاء رمضان متعمدا كفارة. Okay. So the kafara is 3. We know the hadith, right? So there's the 3 things. Here the author starts with feeding the 60 poor people with the mud of the Prophet ﷺ, which we spoke about. It's maybe like half a liter of food or so. And this is a habbu ilayna to the scholars, especially the Malikiya, that this option is the best because more people benefit, right? So we're getting from that as well. This is one of the mufradat of the madhab, contrary to the majority, that there's a choice in choosing one of the 3 according to the Malikiya. You have the choice to do so. The other scholars, they would have the order of the hadith. So, if you can't free a slave, which obviously doesn't really exist today, then you would fast 2 consecutive Islamic months, not considering the qada itself, and then you would feed 60 poor people if you can't fast, right? But the Maliki give you the choice. And the one that's actually mustahab of the 3 is to feed the 60 because more people benefit. More people benefit. نعم. وليس على من أفطر في قضاء رمضان متعمدا كفارة. And the one that breaks their fast purposely during the makeup of Ramadan, there's no kafara on that person. So after Ramadan, when you go to make up and you purposely broke your fast, there's no kafara on you. But of course, you still have to make up that day. ومن أغمي عليه ليلا فأفاق بعد طلوع الفجر فعليه قضاء الصوم. The one that fainted, right, at night, and he didn't wake up until after the Fajr adhan, then that person has to make up that day of fasting, has to make up that day. ويقضي من الصلوات ولا يقضي من الصلوات إلا ما أفاق في وقته. And they don't make up the prayers except the one or except if they woke up in that prayer time. Right, and note as well that Dhuhr and Asr share time and Maghrib and Isha share time, the Daruri time now. وينبغي للصائم أن يحفظ لسانه جوارحه ويعظم من شهر رمضان ما عظم الله سبحانه. Right, and it's obligatory for the one that's fasting to protect their tongue, their speech, right? Obviously, if someone comes to fight with and they say inni sa'im, right? You don't want to engage in anything, especially not backbiting, especially not lies, especially not cursing and all those types of things. And of course, the limbs need to be protected as well from all haram or any possible haram. And to glorify this month in the right way, the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, made this a special month, and we need to do the same and take it seriously, and it could be our last Ramadan anyway. ولا يقرب الصائم النساء بوطء. And the one that's fasting doesn't approach women with regards to sexual intimacy and relations. ولا مباشرة, or touching in a sexual manner. ولا قبلة للذة في نهار Ramadan, or kissing with regards to pleasure and desire. ولا يحرم ذلك عليه في ليله, and it's not haram to do it at night, of course. After Maghrib adhan to Fajr adhan is permissible, but during the day, one should avoid all of these things. Of course, intercourse is already known, but you want to avoid everything that leads to it. ولا بأس أن يصبح جنبا من الوطء. And we already said that so you have the whole night, right, to be intimate, even a little before Fajr, right? And you even if you're not able to make the ghusl until after Fajr, then your fast is still permissible, but of course you have to do it in order to be able to pray. ومن التذ في نهار رمضان بمباشرة أو قبلة فأنذى لذلك فعليه القضاء. So if the one, fell into this act of desire and pleasure with regards to their spouse, obviously, the haram situation, that's already known, but here we're entertaining the halal marriage, of course, but it would obviously make more sense, any type of relations one has, besides obviously the sin that they would get now. So whether it was with, touching, sexually or kissing, and pre-seminal fluid came out, مذي فأمذى لذلك فعليه القضاء, then one has to make up that day. Of course, you continue fasting, refraining, and then you make up that day later, right? But when تعمد ذلك حتى أمنى فعليه الكفارة. But if one continues even more so until many comes out, right? The semen, the seminal fluid, obviously generally coming out with force with regards to the man, then this would require a kafara, because the Maliki, of course, they don't say that the jima is the only thing that requires, like we just took earlier. So they were careless in their fast. So the qada and the kafara and the sin is on these people now. ومن قام رمضان إيمانا واحتسابا غفر له ما تقدم من ذنبه. Right, and this is exactly really what the hadith says, Sahih Bukhari and Muslim, and before that the Muwatta of Imam Malik. Imam Malik narrates this version. Of course, other versions like من صام ومن قام ليلة القدر, and different versions. But one of the barakat of this book, the Risala Ibn Abi Zayd, is that he actually brings like hadith and ayat, like word for word in his book. MashaAllah. So, so if one rises in prayer in Ramadan with iman and ihtisab of the reward, then their sins are forgiven. Right? ما تقدم من ذنبه. وإن قمت فيه بما تيسر فذلك مرجون فضله. Even if you rose up in prayer at night after Isha, until Fajr time, even just a little bit, right? Something that you're able to do, and people have different situations. Whatever you're able to do, then inshallah you get that virtue of standing at night during Ramadan. وتكفير الذنوب به, and then your sins of course are forgiven because of that virtue. Now, والقيام فيه في مسجد الجماعات بإمام ومن شاء قام في بيته وهو أحسن لمن قويت نيته وحده. Okay, so in praying at night in a masjid that has a congregation with an imam, this is of course this what's known as Tarawih prayer. Of course, this is one of the it's a fadila in the Maliki school, right? It's not one of the four. Obviously the witr prayer is one of the four agreed upon sunan in the school with regards to the mu'tamad. So it's a fadila, but it's really a emphasized fadila, as in it's just an important fadila to consider. وَمَنْ شَاءَ قَامَ فِي بَيْتِهِ, but if one wants, they can pray at home. وَهُوَ أَحْسَنُ, لمن قويت نيته وحده, right? And it's better to pray at home, especially if the intention is stronger at home, right? Obviously nobody's around. And this is really the Maliki and Shafi'i opinions that it's actually recommended to pray at home. And this is the asl of the sunnah prayers, besides the faridah, is to pray them at home. Is to pray them at home. So, yes, that's something to know and to consider. So, so one would pray, and obviously this is with the condition that there's still a congregation at the masjid. Like if there's no people praying at the masjid, then obviously that's wrong to do. But yeah, I mean, if people are praying, then it's actually for the Maliki and for the Shafi'is to actually pray at home. Obviously stating that's the asl of the nawafil or sunnah prayers, contrary to the fard prayers. وكان السلف الصالح يقومون فيه في المساجد ب20 ركعة ثم يوترون بثلاث. And the Salaf al-Salih, referring to the Sahaba in particular, but the three generations, they used to pray in the masjid with 20 rak'at. And then they would pray witr with 3 rak'at, so it's 23 rak'at total. ويفصلون بين الشفع والwitri bisalam, right? And in the Maliki school, it's makruh to pray 3 rak'at together, right? So you would pray 2 rak'at and then you would pray 1 rak'at by itself. Yeah, so it'll be 23 rak'at. ثم صلوا بعد ذلك 36 ركعة غير الشفع والوتر وكل ذلك واسع. Then after the 20 rak'at, people became weaker and they prayed 36 rak'at. They prayed 36 rak'at, which means with the witr it'll be 39 rak'at. And there's a narration in the Muwatta about that, and the Mudawwan al-Kubra, of course. When the governor, the Amir, came to Imam Malik, asking to change this, and he said this is Amr al-Qadim, right? So there's amal of that. I mean, it's not really a big deal because even Ibn Abi Zayd says, "Wa kullu dhalika wasi'," right? It's it's okay. It's okay. So the point is just to pray at night. Whether it's 20 or less than 20. But what I want to turn your attention to quickly, so you're seeing, and Imam Khalil says that it was 20, it was made 36, and in Aqrab al-Masalik you'll see like 20 rak'at, for example, the Imam Sidi Ahmed Ardir brings, but you're not really seeing, the opinion of 11, for example. Nothing wrong with 11 at all, right? Nothing wrong with 11, but what I would say that the mu'tamad opinions of the Shafi'iyya, the Hanafi, and the Hanabila are is to pray 20 rak'at. That's their mu'tamad. What they prefer is to pray 20 rak'at. And here you're seeing 20 and or 36. Right? So at least 20. So the four schools would somehow agree on the 20 rak'at. It's even narrated from Imam Dawood al-Zahiri, which, I mean, generally we don't really care about, what the Zahiriyas say, but even it's narrated from him that he preferred 20 rak'at. The one that rejected qiyas, and it said that he rejected ijma' except for ijma' al-sahaba, and amongst other like usuli principles that were rejected by him in the Zahiriyya. So the problem is, of course, are the ones that are going to pray 11 and they say that praying 20 is a bid'ah, even though Umar ibn Khattab and the Sahaba actually prayed 20. Right. So again, that's really what I'm turning your attention to, is that, I mean, the mu'tamad of the four schools generally is somewhere at the three schools, like I already mentioned, the Shafi'i, the Hanafi, and the Hanabila say 20 rak'at. With the 3 rak'at, of course, it'd be 23. And then the Maliki have, 20 or 36, which is obviously 23 and 39. So, it's a big problem when someone, takes one, and the hadith is actually here. so ويسلم في كل ركعتين, of course you pray after every 2 ركعات you do salam. وقالت عائشة رضي الله عنها ما زاد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في رمضان ولا في غيره على 12 ركعة بعد الوتر. So that's obviously Sahih Bukhari and Muslim. It's a known hadith. This is what some would hold on to, and especially in the last couple of decades, and say that praying the 20 is bid'ah. So they're definitely, if they're not okay with 20, they're definitely not okay with 36. But I mean, this is really amal al-ummah, or amal al-sahaba, amal of the ummah, to pray 20. But again, I mean the prayer itself, it's not even in the medical schools of fadila. And the point is to pray, so it's not the biggest deal. But our only point of contention there is the ones that want to pray 11 and make tabdi' of all the ones that accepted 20. That's a huge problem, really. That's a huge problem, and that should not be tolerated, of course. We're done with the fasting section. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.